Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see the post-lunch robust discussion keeping you awake, and I hope we'll be able to have good discussion. My name is Nandkumar Sarvade, and I'm the moderator for today's panel. We have a rich panel today to take up the topic that is for this session. And I'm sure you would have gone through the conference booklet and you've already gone through the profiles of the speakers. But let me briefly tell about the diversity of opinions and perspectives that we have in this particular panel. So on my left, we have Mr. Naveen Kumar Singh, who is the Director General of National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, which is the Government of India agency for focusing on critical infrastructure from a cyber security point of view. Naveen is a fellow IPS officer. He's serving and comes from the Jharkhand cadre. I just wanted to mention two important things about Naveen. One is that he's from IIT Kanpur, and he has won a gallantry medal while in police. And these are two different difficult things to achieve. And he has taken over NCIPC some time back, and he has been introducing various initiatives, which I'm sure he will want to talk about. We also have Himanshu, who is a CXO born in a company born in cloud. So we would definitely want to hear from you, Himanshu. And we have Ganesh from ICICI Bank joining us remotely. Ganesh, good to see you on screen. And Ganesh comes from technology background himself. I am Calcutta. And he has been CXO in ICICI. Before that, he was handling technology management roles. And we would like to hear from Ganesh as well. So the structure of this session is that I will request the panelists to give their specific perspectives, and then we'll come to the Q&A part. But before I ask my colleagues to talk about their perspectives, I wanted to briefly touch upon the topic itself. And the topic is about financial inclusion using cloud and the security aspects of it. Now, why financial inclusion? Why this rather esoteric topic in a technology conference? As we know, in India, we're seeing so much of change and so much of transformation happening that sometimes it kind of we lose track of time. And I was just talking to somebody the other day of an event in 1999. I was telling them how we didn't have cell phones at that time and no way of using Google to find the directions and so on. Of course, in last 10 years, the kind of proliferation of technology that we have seen is everybody is aware how it has been going. Most importantly, from a government point of view, Digital India, which is the big overarching initiative, is very important from a governance point of view in delivery of government services, making them affordable, making them consistent, making them of high quality, making them reach the last person in the society. And for this, technology is going to be the infrastructure which will deliver all this. Now, financial inclusion, as we know, is the key to getting people onto the digital highway. And of course, social media, social platforms have been doing this for many of the middle class people. But if you look at the next billion, so to say, they are all looking at tangible services, and technology-led financial services ranks very high in that. Now, financial inclusion, as you know, is something which is a holy grail. All governments talk about it necessary for economic progress. And recently, as you might have noticed, especially if you're from the financial services sector, RBI has come out with an index which measures financial inclusion. And the index has 97 parameters, and it is a way RBI is measuring how the proliferation of technology and its increasing reach is helping financial inclusion itself. Now, if you look at financial inclusion, it comprises of banking, digital, insurance, and pension, the 4 different verticals within financial services. And within that, there supply-led sides like access, and there are demand-led sides like quality and frequency of use. As you might have seen, India has done very well on access in recent times. Almost 75% progress has come from providing access, which includes the JAM Trinity and the kind of payment service proliferation that we have seen in recent months, particularly during the pandemic time. And this bodes well because now you go to a smallest shop and there is a UPI option available for making payments and so on. So how will cloud help in this? Now that is the question. And as we heard in the previous session also, this is something which takes away the infrastructure related hassles of the organizations which are building and delivering products and services. And the challenge for a security community is how to keep it safe. So with that background, I think we have an excellent panel which comprises of somebody from the regulatory side, government side, law enforcement side, and then we also have a large bank represented, and we have a born in cloud company. So I would request my co-panelists to share their perspective, starting with Mr. Navin Singh, if you would like to share.
Hi everyone. I think India has done reasonably well in improving the financial inclusion in the country in the last decade, and this is largely due to the various initiatives of the government of India. The most important one of it, Mr. Nandkumar already talked about, is the Digital India initiative, through which I think the major thing was to provide the broadband connectivity toward the rural areas. If you actually see the amount of optical fiber cables which have been laid in the last 5 years, that is simply phenomenal, and we are almost reaching every panchayats now through it. And apart from that, a lot of these government's service deliveries, they have been improved by moving on to digital mode of delivery of services, whether it is payment of the subsidies or direct transfer of the benefits. So all these things, by making it electronic, the government has improved transparency and delivery. So it has not only helped in governance, but it has also empowered the people. And this is because of the clear directions from the government. And apart from this, the government has also started this financial inclusion mission, the objective of which was that all Indians should have a bank account. And due to this, since 2014, the number of bank accounts, if you see, have increased by more than 4.5 times. And now the number of bank accounts in India is around 109 crores as per the figures I had seen last end of 2021. So that almost shows that most of the Indians are now having a bank account thanks to the initiatives of the government. And then of course demonetization, this pandemic, these have all contributed to the increase in digitization and hence in the financial inclusion. But I think one thing which has played the most important role here is the new financial products which were offered by the cloud native companies, mostly the e-wallets and the NPCI. They have really done a phenomenal job in the sense that they have cut the monopoly of the credit card companies like MasterCard and Visa, where we are to unnecessarily pay commission for every transactions. With India having its own payment gateways and the payment infrastructure, now we are also not under the threat of any kind of sanctions or any type of non-availability of services. And all this has happened mainly because of these cloud native companies where they could reduce their costs and they could focus on the developing the right kind of financial services products without bothering for the infrastructure and it being cost effective. So I feel cloud adoption has definitely helped us in financial inclusion, and more innovative products in the insurance, pension, and maybe in the credit disbursement and the credit repayment things. If more innovative products are there in these fields also, then definitely the financial inclusion is going to increase. And Cloud, because it helps in the scalability of the operations, it helps in quick adoption of the technology, it helps in quick innovation and testing of your products before launch of the market. So I see cloud definitely has a role in improving the financial inclusion in the days to come, and it cloud can also help the small cooperative and the rural banks, etc., in having a cost effective move towards technology. So this can definitely be an enabler for financial inclusion, is what I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen. I wanted to request Ganesh. He has long experience in banking. How does he see things from his point of view, Ganesh?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you can all hear me. Just actually, Mr. Naveen made the most important point that if you really look at any established market today, any large geographies today, I think India probably can hold its head high in terms of broader financial inclusion. I think our UPI is probably something that any large economy can be proud of, and I don't think anyone has pulled off anything anywhere close to it. And one of the other things that comes to my mind is we are probably the only large economy where every type of payment is available 24/7, all the way across. Somebody wanting to, let us say, transfer 100 crores to somebody who is just walking across the street and wants to buy, let's say, 1 dozen bananas. All of these systems are available 24/7. This is something that even very, very large economies don't have. A lot of their very large corporate payment systems actually operate 5 days or banking hours and stuff like that. So we've really come a long way in enabling financial inclusion, particularly from the financial services sector and across different customer base. And today, in fact, we find a lot of situations where among our customer base, quite often digital adoption is much faster with the new set of population which is coming on into banking than even people who are kind of exposed to the older methods. Sometimes you say, no, that is, you leapfrog one generation. So a lot of our population is actually leapfrogged one generation. They are directly transacting on the smartphones without having ever had a credit card or ever had a plastic card. So that's a great thing that as a country we are in. And I definitely agree with Mr. Singh in terms of how cloud creates literally almost a flat structure or a level playing field that today a very sophisticated capability, which could be the world's best CRM or which could be the most innovative payment product, is available as much to a very, very small payment player or a very small bank as much to a very large bank like ours. So that difference kind of between capabilities that one can come up and one can offer to the market and in terms of time to market, that is getting really, really kind of literally disappearing, which is not necessarily always good news for maybe people like us, but at the same time that kind of puts people like us on the toes and then make sure that we offer even better capability and even better features and new this ones to our customers. So that way, this is something that is kind of a win-win situation for everyone. And this kind of healthy competition and people trying to offer much better both services and what profitable offers to the customers, I think it's kind of at the end of the day, it only puts the customer right in front and makes it better and better for our kind of ever growing both middle class as well as aspiring middle class population. So I think this is in a way a great win-win situation for us to be in. And obviously, as we go through the rest of the panel, we will talk about challenges. We will talk about some of the safeguards that one has to take care. But nevertheless, this is a great opportunity and a great juncture that we are sitting in.
Thanks, Ganesh. Himanshu?
So born out of cloud, one of the most important challenge for us 4 years back was how do we build systems that people can trust, right? So we're trying to build systems for affluent citizens of India. Now, if you look at the affluent segment of India, obviously we had to build systems which people can trust, right? So trust was very important, and this was very challenging for us also, right? How do we establish trust on cloud? for the citizens of India, keeping all the regulatory aspect in mind, right? So I was amongst the founding member, and I got an opportunity to basically make some of these design changes or understand or architect all these design changes 4 years back. So I was fortunate enough to unlearn from all my mistakes from my previous company. Also, given a fact that we wanted to have a cloud-first approach, keeping all the regulatory requirements in mind, and also build a scalable system which can possibly scale 5 years, 6 years down the line. It was very challenging for us to understand how the whole ecosystem is going to be on the cloud, right? And even looking from a product standpoint, we being a product company, how do we build a narrative that this product fits into security first as a concept and ensures all the regulatory and compliance requirements were some of the key challenges that we had to face from day zero itself, right? So it was very imperative for us to think through all of these factors, account all of these factors, and have a very strong strategy in place to think about how we are going to build the trust for all our end users, right? So keeping all these things in mind, we are able to make few iterations. Actually, we made 17 iterations of our application before we launched, right? So every time we would go through, we would identify that there are things missing, there are some architecture changes required, how do we align with all the regulatory and compliance requirements, right? So all these questions for our MVP were very much pretty much documented. Lot of things from our industry standpoint, like PCI DSS, CIS, looking at NIST cybersecurity framework. These were some of the key aspects that we took from our previous learning from our previous company, where a lot of us failed actually, because all of us had background dealing with a lot of bureaucracy in the company, in our previous companies, dealing with a lot of org hierarchies, not able to work with our partners. So all these problems were solved here. We had to basically unlearn all those, come up with a very fresh mind, and try to understand what is going to be significant for us in next 4 to 5 years. So we started with payments as an ecosystem, providing payment services from our platform. In last 4 years, fast forward, there has been a lot of support from NPCI, from regulators. If you look at banks aspect also, I think we have partnered with a lot many banks in India, and they have helped us basically grow in context of lot of frameworks. Now, if you look at a lot of frameworks in context of India, there's a lot of master guidelines from RBI. NPCI has helped a lot. There are a lot of NPCI requirements. Now, if you start looking or have a very cloud-centric view to all of these requirements, I think you will start to build a graph, and you will start to see there are a lot of overlapping controls which a cloud-first or security-first company should adapt. And we had all these flexibility to look at all these aspects from a regulatory point of view, from a industry standard point of view, from some of the compliances that we wanted to achieve by the time we launched our first product. So all these central view give us a clarity to how do we achieve automation, right? So automation actually became a very key point and crucial central point, not only to embed compliance and security into product, but also to build trust. So we took that as an opportunity to identify what are these factors which could be automated, right? Some of the very important things that company face problems while they grow very, very fast is identity kind of becomes a problem, right? In a company, there would be multiple identities. So these were some of the learnings that we had, that some of the key aspect like identity on a cloud should be solved from day zero, right? In terms of incident response, how do we take it very, very seriously? And there's a lot of support again from the previous conversation. Also, you heard about certain coming up with a lot of guideline in terms of how cloud first company can adapt, right? So all these guidance has actually helped us give a very directional view of how a cloud first company should be, what should they actually prioritize, and how do they build an ecosystem which the end user can trust, right? So some of these key factors has helped us achieve And there has been a massive support from the government, from the regulators, from the banks that we partner with, and of course, all the affluent customers that we have on our platform. So I think these are the few things that possibly I will try to cover during the whole session. So these are my takeaways that I have learned in last 4 years at my current job. Over to you, sir.
So I think one of the observations or criticisms has been that the regulators are slow to take note of a trend and provide clear guidance as to how new technologies can be used, right? So in banking, of course, the regulator always had outsourcing guidelines, and it was not clear whether cloud outsourcing is covered or not. Then RBI came up with data localization requirements, which had an impact on cloud services and so on. As you might know, in June 2022 this year, RBI came out with draft guidelines on IT outsourcing, and which has a separate annexure on cloud outsourcing. And it talks about the whole life cycle, about how a vendor to be selected, what kind of configurations the vendor must have, how there should be compliance with privacy, data sovereignty, and other requirements, and how an exit strategy is also to be planned, which many times people don't really think about. And all that is covered. So hopefully these guidelines will soon get formalized as master directions. But I wanted to ask Navin one question about, so many of the regulated entities have multiple regulations to comply with. So what is your own approach on how to reduce the compliance burden by harmonizing the regulations to the extent possible? And what would you advise companies about meeting the compliance requirements in general?
Hello. Hello. See, as far as NCIPC is concerned, we are the national nodal body for protection of the critical information infrastructure in the country. And our stand has been to help the critical information infrastructure entities adopt technology for the sake of efficiency, and complying to the security should not make them derived of the benefits of the technology. So we have always been quite open to the adoption of cloud technology and any other technology, and we have basically said that you should be quite aware of the technology, what it offers, what are the risks associated with it. And once you understand the risks, you should have adequate risk mitigation policy. You should have adequate controls to ensure that security is there. And regarding easing the compliance burden, as far as NCIPC is concerned, we have entities in all the 7 critical sectors, that is the banking, financial services, and in insurance sector, power and energy sector, or whether it is the government sector, the strategic and public enterprises sector. Then we have the transport sector. So in all these sectors, there are already regulators available, and we are trying to work with the regulators so that the compliance burdens doesn't increase, and we try to operate through the regulators. And in some of the cases where we are seeing that the critical information infrastructure entities are having to do a lot of audits to comply to various guidelines, we are now working with the regulators to ensure that in 1 or 2 audits, all the compliances which are required, if they can be mapped, and if 1 or 2 audits should be sufficient, so that they don't have to engage into a lot of compliance audits. And my emphasis always has been to also look beyond compliance, and our policy in short is to be able to enable the CXO and to empower them so that their voices are heard. They have the required resources. They get the required resources both in terms of manpower and in terms of the technology which they need. But our advice always has been to the CXOs to be totally aware of the things, to be aware of what they are outsourcing, and what kind of control should be there, what they are doing, so that they are able to supervise them properly. So that kind of a minimum talent base should be there within the CISOs of the critical information infrastructure entities so that they are able to oversee whatever has been outsourced. So that has been the general approach of NCIPC, and we have critical information infrastructure entities whose critical applications are also on the cloud, and we have helped them in doing the risk assessment properly, and we have suggested additional controls which are required to make it more safe and to reduce their attack surface. So that is how we are going in general, sir, and the same approach remains as far as the cloud is concerned also, because we do want the entities to take advantage of the cloud. For example, if you take the stock exchanges, for example, there are a lot of small stock exchanges or a lot of brokers and others who have to who basically interact with the MIs, unless those are also secured, they always pose a threat to the stock exchanges or to the market infrastructure institutions. So when we think in terms of enabling them, then we do have to think in terms of moving to some kind of a shared resources, and there again the provision of SOC services or CM services through the cloud and all, they are more commercially viable options, and we are there to do whatever is possible so that this is actually adopted, and the overall security of the cyberspace of the Indian entities that increases. Thank you.
I think that's great to know. I wanted to ask Ganesh from his past experience, would you have any learnings to share about how this cloud journey is to be done, especially prioritization of applications or any hybrid use of cloud, any security related things to keep in mind?
Yeah. So basically, based on our experience, which is probably fairly limited because it's early days, because we are also kind of wanting to adopt a very, very calibrated, gradual approach onto the cloud. Some of the things that we have realized is that the skills area becomes extremely important, particularly in companies like ours, unlike, let's say, born in the cloud kind of companies that Himanshu represents. In our case, you have experience, but the experience is in a different context, in the data center, etc. So the skills in terms of whether it is a mix of skills that you train or whether it's a mix of skills that you acquire from the market and then take those kind of people, I think the skills are going to become an important element in the cloud journey. That is something that we have really learned, and obviously I think that applies to anybody who is trying to get onto the cloud. And of course, some of the other things that we are discovering is that one has to be very, very clear about the kind of cloud arrangement that you are getting into, with clear roles and responsibilities, not only between, let's say, the bank or the company and the cloud service provider, but also with various other intermediaries which may be involved, whether it may be your software provider or whether some of your other partners who are implementing. So the understanding the roles and responsibilities and being very clear, I think, avoids a lot of issues later. And the other thing, which is a little more tactical probably for some of the practitioners or some of the people who are there in the audience, quite often we get carried away by this nomenclature of whether something is an IaaS arrangement or a PaaS arrangement. Increasingly, we are discovering that the actual arrangements which you do, or the actual projects which you, when you start running them, particularly when they are very large projects, quite often may not necessarily fit in completely with IaaS, completely with PaaS. They may have some mix of everything. So the most important thing for practitioners to look at, particularly from a security clearance or a security checking angle, is to not go by these nomenclature. Don't get them kind of into your head and allow them to disturb your thought process, but go more from the point of view of understanding the end-to-end data and traffic flow, and then make sure that your controls are aligned with that. Basically, wherever you are supposed to be responsible for the particular part of the traffic, then you should have complete visibility and control, and vice versa. Quite often, this is where sometimes very large projects, very complex architecture based projects get into trouble, where you get lost in this terminology of IaaS, PaaS, etc., and you are not able to actually assess very objectively. I think that is something that we should all look at. We should not simply go by these terminologies because they can be very confusing. Because as, for example, you will discover that some of the very large SaaS platforms have a good element of PaaS built in them. They give you connectors where you can actually develop a lot of stuff on a PaaS basis, and then those will run practically seamlessly along with the SaaS offering. So if you don't handle that accordingly, then you will simply blindly treat it as SaaS and not have the right kind of control. So this is something that as we go along, we are also learning. And the other thing is, this is a very kind of a counterintuitive thing that as you do more cloud, as you do more agile, I would say that you need to be even more disciplined. So this is not, quite often we think that when you want to be innovative, you can just go like you can swing your bat, closing your eyes. Then in fact, what will end up happening is that you will really not hit anything. You will not only not get out, maybe you will end up wasting a lot of balls and the asking rate will only go up. But what is more important is with cloud, with some of these agile things, I think the discipline becomes even more important. I think people will have to seriously look at this landing zone, standardized cloud architecture kind of constructs before they go in, so that the later movements become much easier, because you put a solid superstructure or solid foundation by way of creating a good base architecture and landing zone and all of that, so that you can move 20 projects, 40 projects, 60 projects without kind of having to assess each one of them independently, because that becomes much easier. Whereas if you don't have that, then every single project becomes a new thing, and we are all going to be kind of running around all the time. And last, before I kind of wind up on this question, I think one of the things that we have also learned is from a security monitoring perspective, we also have to look at what is the right level of monitoring that you need, particularly in terms of distinguishing between what will come as part of the native cloud service tools vis-a-vis what will come as generic tools, because there are both pluses and minuses. There are some advantages of generic tools, because you can see probably multiple clouds in one place. Whereas in the case of native monitoring tools, probably you will have more preventive ability, etc., which I think Himanshu will know even better. So these are things that at least I thought some things that we are learning along the way, and probably for people to be kind of conscious of when they get on with their cloud journey.
I think what Ganesh is saying is very relevant, because we continue to have these instances of breaches in the cloud, and probably this advice would be very useful. So we are kind of approaching the end of the session, but I wanted to get the audience questions in. So if anyone has any question, kindly state your name, and one of the panelists can take the question. At the back. Any other mic? Yeah, please.
So how often do you go back to the critical senior companies, organizations, and do a proper risk assessment, or if we are talking about clouds, do you also indulge in doing their cloud threat postures? Do you work with this companies?
See, the meaty policy is also is already in place regarding the adoption of clouds by the government entities and even the public sector entities. So most of these entities who are CII, they belong to these categories. So they can take the cloud services only of the empaneled cloud service providers. So these empaneled cloud service providers, they can provide you cloud services in three different deployment ways. One of them is the private cloud, the other is the One is the public cloud, the second is the virtual private cloud, and the last one is the government community cloud. So most of these services is from the government community clouds. And MeetY does a fairly extensive audit by STQC before empaneling that cloud service provider to provide services to the government entities to move to the cloud. So a basic level of security is definitely ensured. And then when we look at the entities, we first look at what exactly is the kind of services it is taking from the cloud. Is it infrastructure as a service or is it software as a service? And depending upon that, we look what kind of security related responsibility lies with the cloud service provider, what is with the entity, and whether there is any gap in that or not. So those kinds of risks, whether they have been properly identified and whether appropriate mitigation measures are there. That is what we definitely look at. Of course, in the long run, we may like to put on additional controls on the cloud service providers wherever it is required, but we would like to focus more on technology related controls for the cloud service providers where the encryption probably is done in such a way that the key is in your control, so that the cloud service provider is not able to have a look at their data and things like that. And I think the key is how do you do the identity and the access management, because if that is done properly, then that also reduces a lot of risk. And then of course, as Ganesh was talking about the monitoring part, what is being monitored by the cloud service provider and what you should monitor. There should not be any gap, and at times the two should be looked together. So whether that is being done or not, that is what we look at. And at what frequency do we do, so that we have our own systems depending upon the criticality of that particular critical information infrastructure. We decide the periodicity, and depending upon other information, if some incident etc has happened or something has been reported, then maybe that gets more attention and things like that.
Hi,
Is the mic? Yeah.
I'm Abraham here. So we are talking about financial inclusion for cloud services. In today's scenario, right, where we have the proliferation of digital economy, where we have more number of users who are using digital services for banking and other related services, right? And we were talking about saying that more of affluent users would be where we would be targeting, and then we'll be making these services. But in today's scenario, where we talk about, when we say financial inclusion, we have a lot of people, even from a rural area, people who are from the lower background, right, who started using digital banking because they were people who are not introduced to these kind of technologies, were not using these things. And now we are suddenly exposed, and now the banking sector is also exposed to these kind of people who may not have these kind of technical knowledge or know-how to how to protect themselves, because we see a lot of phishing attacks or malware attacks, like people are getting calls and then saying that, okay, can you share me your OTP pin and things like that, right? So where we are, the banking systems is now very vulnerable, because people, it is not that people who have technology, technically savvy, who can use the banking services or a smartphone or anything like that. We have people who have no clue what they're doing on the system. They just know I'll receive an OTP and then I probably need to share it with someone or use it on the system or things like that. So how equipped are we to handle these kind of situations? Because when we say digital inclusion, we need to focus on people like them as well.
No, I get what you're saying. Unfortunately, the answer is out of scope in this topic. But yeah, since is there...
I'll try to answer, because I was the nodal officer for cybercrime in Jharkhand as well. As far as this financial inclusion is concerned, what my co-panelist said was about affluent sections, because he dealt with a product which deals with affluent section of the society. Otherwise, these e-wallets and all, they basically deal with the people who are at the grassroots levels. And so the majority of the financial inclusion which the government is focusing on is to bring those deprived sections to have access to these. And how do you ensure the cyber security and all? I think the education of the masses who are using this, that is the key, and a lot of initiatives are being taken in this regard. Apart from that, there are regular interactions between the law enforcement agencies and the regulators, where the law enforcement agencies, if they find some loopholes and some extra regulations to be put in place, so that is passed on to the regulators, and the regulators then try to close those security loopholes. For example, if you look at the last 3-4 years, Now, if you have a check transaction above a particular value, you get a call from the bank and they verify it. When you get credit cards, they are initially disabled for international payments. So all those security controls could be put in place because of this feedback mechanism, and the government is quite aware of the fact that we have to make these transactions secure for this for this ecosystem to be actually used by the people. And the MHA has made this I4C, which is which records all kinds of cybercrime online. They analyze the kind of crimes which are taken place and what necessary technical controls can be done. Of course, apart from the legal side of it, where you track the gangs which are involved. They have formed interstate teams which track these gangs so that they are taken to task. But at the same time, what level of more technical controls can be built in so that these kinds of frauds doesn't take place? That is very much on the agenda, and a lot of things have taken place in that direction also.
I'll just add that tomorrow there is a session on this problem, the retail cybercrime from the user's point of view. Kindly take a look and you may want to attend. Yeah. So I think we are completely out of time, and I'm getting repeated reminders from the organizers to wrap it up.
One question?
Okay, the last one. Yeah.
So my name is Darshan. So this is more towards financial inclusion being simplified with cloud native platforms that are available, and the question is more towards how is Indian government looking at it, because we are talking about Atmanirbharta here, and do we also plan to have our own cloud infrastructure? And I know that there was something on MEG that was happening. So are we trying to do something around that where we don't depend on the AWSs or the Azures or the GCPs, and we build our own, and so that we are much more isolated from these global platforms? And where do we see ourselves?
See, I think if you look at all the 18 cloud service providers which are empaneled by MeitY, most of them are the Indian cloud entities only. So Government of India is doing its bit to ensure that we promote the Indian cloud service providers, and they also have a global presence in the long run.
Okay. Right, thank you. So I just want to thank the audience for your attention, and my co-panelists for sharing their deep insights, including Ganesh, who could not join us here, but is there in Mumbai. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you around after this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.